This past week, Hollywood's social media world was shaken when Gigi Newman, daughter of the legendary actor Paul Newman, unexpectedly posted a passage from her father's long-hidden diary kept secret for decades. In it, Paul did not write about himself, but about his friends, stars who were forced to live in the shadows simply because they dared to love someone of the same sex. Yet within 24 hours, Gigi hastily deleted the post. According to what Gigi disclosed, Paul Newman had recorded in detail a series of tragedies that had never been made public, some people whose truth was only revealed after their deaths. Others who, terrified of public exposure, lived their lives in hiding, some even murdered at a young age. There were also stars whom the studios themselves forced to undergo treatment injections and to marry women in order to preserve a respectable public image. Which stars did Paul Newman mention in that diary, and why was Gigi compelled to erase it so quickly? 1. Marlon Brando, the man who belonged to no mold. The section about Marlon Brando and Paul Newman's old leather notebook opens more like a confession than a recollection. At the top of the page, Paul wrote a simple line. He didn't belong to anyone, not even himself. Gigi Newman recalled that when she reached this part, she had to close the notebook for a while. Her father's tone was unlike anything in the other pages. It carried a breath of admiration tinged with sorrow, as if Paul were writing about a friend he both admired and pitied. Brando and Paul met in the mid-1950s when Hollywood was entering its golden age, a time when fame often meant the loss of freedom. Paul noted that in 1954, after the premiere of On the Waterfront in Manhattan, Brando pulled him away from the applauding crowd. Standing in the hallway of the Waldorf Astoria, Brando whispered, "I don't want to live in the cage they call a man." According to Paul, it was one of the truest things he had ever heard in the City of Stars. At that time, Brando was already a superstar. Life magazine called him the most attractive man in the world, while Time placed his face on its cover 3 times in a single decade. Yet behind that cool exterior, Brando was a man of pure instinct with almost no sense of boundaries when it came to love. Paul wrote, he loved people, not genders. He could fall for a girl on set in the morning and spend the night drinking with a man who made him feel seen. Brando's mansion on North Beverly Drive was the site of many strange private gatherings. There were no cameras, no reporters, only a few trusted friends, sometimes including names Hollywood preferred to keep hidden. One of them was comedian Richard Pryor, who was later confirmed by his ex-wife Jennifer Lee Pryor to have had a special, intimate relationship with Brando in the late 1970s. Paul wrote Richard was the only one who could make Marlon laugh naturally. Between them was something close to empathy. But Pryor wasn't the only one. Earlier in the 1950s, Brando had been deeply connected with Wally Cox, his childhood friend. They shared an apartment for a time in New York. When Cox passed away in 1973, Brando kept his ashes for over 30 years, stored in a cabinet at his Mulholland Drive home. A lesser-known fact, when Brando died in 2004, his ashes were mixed with Cox's and scattered together in Tahiti on the island Brando had once built for himself, called Tetiaroa. Paul wrote, "They say Brando had dozens of children, true, but no one really knows how many were his by blood. He didn't believe in marriage, yet he was always chasing the feeling of being a father. Some were his wives' children, some his lovers', some he adopted simply out of compassion. Brando had at least 11 children born over many years and relationships. 3 were with his first wife, Anna Kashfi, 5 with his second wife, Movita Castaneda. The rest were adopted or born to people, women, or men who had once been close to him. Brando never denied nor confirmed anything. He lived as if he needed no one's belief, no one's understanding." In 1976, Rolling Stone conducted a long interview with him. When asked about the rumors, Brando calmly replied, "I've had many experiences with people. I don't see any reason to hide that." The statement sent shockwaves through Hollywood. NBC called his agent for confirmation. Vanity Fair devoted an entire issue to the Brando phenomenon. And The Guardian ran a headline, "Brando has just broken the American definition of manhood." Paul's diary included a passage describing Brando after that interview night. He fled to his Malibu home, refusing all calls. Paul wrote, "He came to my house close to midnight, asking to sleep over because reporters were swarming outside his gate. I poured him a glass of whiskey and he said only one thing, 'Here at least I can just be a man.'" From then on, Brando gradually withdrew from the world he once ruled. He bought an island in Tahiti, raised his family, adopted orphans, and built a school for the locals. Yet inside, Paul wrote, Brando remained utterly lonely. He could have everything but peace, perhaps because he never truly belonged anywhere, not even to himself. After Brando's death in 2004, the Los Angeles Times wrote, "The most beautiful man in Hollywood is gone, leaving behind a life no one could define." But in his diary, Paul Newman ended the chapter with a short, piercing line. He dared to live truthfully, even when he knew that in Hollywood, that was the most dangerous thing one could do. From the chapter about Brando, the man who shattered every mold, Paul turned to another figure, also an icon of glamour, yet one who chose to live the exact opposite way, a refined gentleman, charming and impeccably perfect, whose flawless image hid a man forever on the run. 2. Cary Grant, the elegant gentleman and the secret home with Randolph Scott. Cary Grant was the embodiment of sophistication. Born in 1904 in Bristol, England, he immigrated to the United States in 1920 and became a name admired around the world. A radiant face, a warm baritone voice, and a walk that seemed made for tuxedos, everything about him exuded grace. Yet beneath that polished world, Cary carried a secret that everyone in the industry knew, but no one was ever allowed to say aloud. Paul wrote that when he first arrived in Hollywood in 1947, he heard older actors whisper about a house in Santa Monica that people half-jokingly, half-seriously called Bachelor Hall. It was the mansion where Cary Grant and Randolph Scott, his co-star in Hot Saturday 1932, had lived together for nearly 2 decades. Bachelor Hall stood on North Amalfi Drive overlooking the beach. Everyone in Hollywood knew of it, yet no one dared mention its name in print. Paul wrote in his notebook, "I visited once in 1951, a White House with windows open wide to the sunlight. Cary was standing by the stove cooking while Randolph sat on the porch, legs propped on a wicker chair, reading the newspaper. When they saw me, they simply smiled, no explanation needed. The peace of that moment was so complete that I had to pretend to believe they were just 2 roommates." According to many in the industry, that house hosted quiet gatherings of stars who could not live as their true selves. Producer George Cukor, actor Montgomery Clift, and even a young Rock Hudson were all said to have appeared there at different times. No reporters were invited, no cameras were ever allowed. It was the only space in Hollywood where for a few hours people could simply exist as they were. Rumors about Cary Grant and Randolph Scott's relationship began to swirl in the late 1930s, when Modern Screen magazine published a series of everyday life photos of the pair sunbathing at the beach together, doing laundry, having breakfast in the kitchen. The photos provided by Paramount itself were meant to craft an image of the cheerful bachelor life, but the public saw something different. Industry journalists began to whisper, and studio executives grew furious. Paramount even threatened to sue Modern Screen for damaging Cary Grant's commercial image. From that moment on, every major publication was strictly forbidden from touching the